Thanks, Kieran, Mary, ladies and gentlemen. I'm both delighted and honoured to be with you this evening and to have been asked to launch this very fine report. And I'd like at the outset to record my appreciation to the work of Atlantic Philanthropies in the state, perhaps most noted in the area of human rights, but in particular North-South relations, where huge advances have been made over our lifetime. I was interested to hear Kieran remark that if he's writing a book, the title of the book will be "That'll Never Work." I come from Laois Offaly. In fact, I'm very proud and privileged to be one of the 5 elected members of the National Assembly from the constituency of Laois Offaly. But one thing that irks me, and if I heard it once in the last 50 years, I heard it every day, and it's not that this won't work, it's actually worse. It is, you're at nothing. And if it's said with a Midlands accent that even sounds worse, no, you're at nothing. You're at nothing. So I'm delighted that over the few years that I've spent in Parliament, that when one looks at record of contributions or whatever, that the legislative wheel does move around and people are at something most of the time. And this evening's report outlines in some detail the often troubled journey from the decriminalising of homosexuality and the repeal of the 19th century discriminating Victorian legislation in 1993 to the as yet unfulfilled destination of equal citizenship for all our people, and developing and protecting a code of human rights of people irrespective of their sexual orientation, whether gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender persons. It must be the core objective of any civilised democratic state in the 21st century. And the achievement, as Kieran has outlined, the achievement of all-party agreement on the enactment of the Civil Partnership Bill represented an important milestone, not only for Parliament, but for Irish society. And as I recall saying in the course of the debate on the passing of the bill, the content of that bill was a mere stepping stone towards equality. And I'm very conscious that the provision of same-sex marriage in Ireland is a core objective of GLEN, together with the full recognition of such marriages where contracted outside the state in other jurisdictions. And I think it's very timely that your launch takes place in the same week as the Constitutional Convention commences its proceedings. The first meeting has been scheduled for 2 p.m. in Dublin Castle next Saturday. And I'm honoured to have been asked by the Taoiseach to lead the Fine Gael majority grouping on the Constitutional Convention, which will report to government before the end of next year. And as you will be aware, same-sex marriage and whether our constitution needs amending is an issue that will be firmly on the agenda for the Constitutional Convention. The Taoiseach and the Kenny has given a formal commitment to the Dáil that the government will give a public response through the Dáil to each of the recommendations from the Constitutional Convention within 4 months of that recommendation having been made. So the deliberations and the recommendations of the Constitutional Convention are central to any action that will be taken by government to an informed, wider public discourse on the matter. And I look forward to this engagement. The programme for government, as agreed between Fine Gael and Labour parties, contains a commitment to reform and update much of our family law code. One of the great weaknesses in the current legal framework of civil partnership, which as opposition justice spokesperson I recorded at the time, was the failure of the legislature to specifically address issues relating to parental rights of gay couples and the legal relationship of gay parents to children being parented by them in circumstances to which the parents are parties to a civil partnership or individuals cohabiting in an intimate and committed relationship. And I was very much taken by and subsequently informed by my experience as a constituency TD, as a rural TD, of a particular case in my district, which experience I have no doubt is shared by each of my 165 colleagues throughout Leinster House. And I'm acutely aware that we need to reform family law to secure equal citizenship for lesbian and gay parents and in the best interest of the children. This reforming focus must also ensure that children in lesbian and gay family units are able to form a legal connection with their non-biological parent and that kindred relationships flow from such a legal connection. Reforms are also needed in the area of guardianship, custody, access to ensure maintenance and succession rights for children of civil partners. So drawing from my own constituency experience, I would urge Kieran and GLEN and other related advocacy groups to present cases to individual TDs and representatives which demonstrate anxiety and hardship and suffering and discrimination and inequality in every neighbourhood throughout the state. From my experience as a representative and as a legislator, I can tell you that there is no better way to focus on and move the movable middle, as is described in your report. So a root and branch review of our family law code must take into account developments that have occurred in the area of assisted human reproduction that currently do not have the protection or force of Irish law. There is need to provide clarity. There's need to provide legal certainty in relation to the parent-child relationship, where children are conceived as a result of assisted reproduction or born to a surrogate. This area remains almost wholly unregulated. There is need to bring our laws in this area into the 21st century to ensure that they reflect the welcome new provisions now contained in the new Article 42A of the Constitution, following the recent passing of the children's referendum. The best interest of the child must be of paramount consideration, and it's not in the best interest of either parents or children that we deny the reality of the complexity of diverse family relationships that factually exist in every constituency in Ireland in the year 2012. With a view towards addressing this area of law, Justice Minister Alan Shatter and Children's Minister Francis Fitzgerald are preparing a Family Relationships and Children's Bill, which I expect will be published sometime next year and enacted before the end of 2013. On the issue of day-to-day enjoyment of life and personal safety, you will know that this state, like every state, has an obligation to respect the objective equal value and dignity of every citizen, regardless of sexual orientation. Having a stake as an equal in your community must mean being able to walk the streets safely while holding the hand of your partner. And I realise that real progress has been made in policing with the setting up of the Garda liaison officers to the LGBT community. I very much acknowledge and welcome what the Garda are doing in this area, but I also accept that there's much more to be done in this regard. As you know, recently Ireland secured a seat on the United Nations Human Rights Council, and from January next we will actively participate in the Council's work in the human rights area. This election strongly endorses our commitment to promoting and protecting human rights and the rule of law, both at home and abroad. It also adds force and weight to the state's statements and actions in this field. The state takes, and indeed must take, very seriously the responsibilities that come with this exciting and challenging role. The government has taken a strong stance on violations of the rights of the gay and lesbian community in Ireland and indeed on the international stage. This is a position which will be developed during our membership of the Council. Ireland will continue to support measures for the protection of human rights at EU and international level, and indeed in our bilateral engagements with other countries. As you know, also in January we take on the presidency of the EU, and I'm assured by my colleague, the Minister for Justice, that Ireland has a number of priorities in the justice and home affairs and social policy areas, two of which will be of real interest. First is the Justice Commissioner Reding's intention to bring forward proposals for a justice scoreboard to evaluate the rule of law across EU member states. Our presidency will support the concept of a scoreboard on justice, rule of law, fundamental rights and democracy. Such an instrument, if negotiated with due sensitivity, has the potential to reinforce the highest rule of law standards across the European Union. The potential of the initiative will have to be realised on the basis of a consensus among member states, and this would be a positive achievement for the EU in terms of both enhanced governance and standard setting. The scope of this initiative needs to be broad enough to ensure that it's not seen as directed at any individual member state, and we all have room for improvement in this regard. Kieran mentioned the the historic consensus that was achieved in the Dáil with the passing of the civil partnership legislation. He mentioned in particular the contribution of the main opposition party on the occasion, my own party, Fine Gael. And I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the leadership of the then Minister for Justice, Dermot Ahern. In fact, I spoke to Dermot last week. He had received his invitation to attend tonight. He did say to me that perhaps he might be just here, but I understand he had a late engagement to render his attendance here impossible. But I would like to acknowledge his leadership and indeed his contribution at securing the agreement of the majority Fianna Fáil party on the occasion. I mightn't have acknowledged that at the time, but I can firmly do so now that he's in retirement and that I'm a member of the main government party. But seriously, I do think great credit is due to Dermot Ahern for carefully steering the legislation through the House. Also on the European stage, the European Parliament has recently made advances on a roadmap to equality of lesbian and gay persons. Senior officials from the Department of Justice recently met with representatives of the International Lesbian and Gay Association in Europe a few weeks ago on the occasion of their annual conference, which was held this year in Dublin. ILGA outlined their views on the value of an EU roadmap for equality for LGBT persons. They asked Ireland to consider this proposal during the course of our presidency. And while this proposal is arising quite late in the planning and priorities for our EU presidency, which commences in a few weeks' time, we will await to see what the Commission proposes, and the Irish Government certainly hopes to support an initiative during the course of our presidency in the first 6 months of next year. So in conclusion, and in wishing you well, might I say as a legislator and as a public representative, that we can travel together along the often winding and bumpy surface road that is the road to equality. It's regrettable that the road is sometimes difficult to negotiate. But one thing is clear: there will be no obstacles of an insurmountable nature on the road, the destination of which is full participation and equal citizenship. I wish you well.
I'd just like to very quickly thank Charlie for what was, I think, a very powerful speech, a very detailed speech, a very comprehensive speech. And we would ask Charlie if he could give us a copy of the speech by email or whatever, and we will circulate it to everybody, because I think it's a good roadmap there for us to be working on going in for the next couple of years. Both in Europe and in Ireland. And just to say as well that Dermot Ahern did wish that he could be here, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. And just to acknowledge that Timmy Dooley is here from Fianna Fáil now, and also Kieran O'Quinn, who was a special advisor to Dermot Ahern, and Niall McCutcheon, who was a senior official in the Department of Justice, Equality and Law Reform when a lot of this progress was made. So that's it. Thanks very much. There's more refreshments and food, hopefully, and hopefully you'll hang around for a while. Thanks.